Greetings, America. Welcome from the Arctic. That is Atlanta, Georgia. The phone number, 877-973-7425. If you want to be on the program, it's an open line Friday. We're going to spend time on your phone calls, but I got a housekeeping note for you to understand. I've got to be on radio until 7 p.m. tonight. At 3 p.m. Eastern time, I'll start doing local coverage on WSB in Atlanta for traffic. But my call screener has to be moved from his location to a different location before the roads freeze. So sometime after 1:30, we got to stop taking phone calls. So you got a limited amount of time to be able to get your call in today, 877-973-7425. I got the call screening program up so I can do that. But obviously, we have to get to the big news first, which is the sentencing of Trump. But before I do that, I'm sorry, we all need a laugh. And this is the funniest thing. How boneheaded. I saw it and I thought this cannot possibly be real. But it is real. I got to describe this for you. Pakistani International Airlines, PIA. I am very familiar with them. Growing up overseas, they were regularly they were regularly flying through Dubai. Most of my friends from Pakistan flew them home. It's the International Airline of Pakistan, and they just put this on social media. It is their new ad. They're going back to Paris, and the ad, literally, the text is Paris, we're coming today. And it shows a PIA 777 jet about to fly into the Eiffel Tower. Resuming flights between Islamabad and Paris from January 10th, 2025. All they needed was an Allahu Akbar. Literally shows the plane about to fly into the Empire State Building. How boneheaded was that? Pakistan International Airlines. Oh my gosh. I saw that and I literally, it says Paris, we're coming today. And next to Paris is a 777, and it's about an inch to the left of the middle of the Eiffel Tower with a big French flag behind it, and the flag and the plane is on the red part of the flag. Wow. All right. I'm sorry. I had to start. I saw that. This is no impulse control. I couldn't save it for a short segment. It's just too funny. We can start the day with a laugh, and now we can laugh at the left. The people on the left are all like, we can call him a felon officially. Donald Trump's been sentenced. I want to get to the sentencing, but I want to start with the Supreme Court and the outrage over the Amy Coney Barrett and John Roberts siding with the left in the United States Supreme Court. I'm going to say something here and need you to listen to me, and I'm sure someone's going to want to excerpt this and take it out of context. Were I a justice on the United States Supreme Court, I would have sided with John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett and not paused sentencing. And you need to understand why. Because I think that this case, the so-called hush money criminal case in New York, is garbage. And if you postpone sentencing, you could not throw the case out. I would not have taken the case because I want to throw the case out altogether. There is a very famous case from 2016. John Roberts wrote the case. The case is Bob McDonnell versus United States, and it involved the former governor of Virginia, Bob McDonnell. He was convicted of honest services fraud and the Hobbs Act. Interestingly enough, the judge and the lawyer, the prosecutor was Jack Smith. The case was whether or not the federal bribery statute involved the actions that McDonald took under an official act. 7 of the 10 charges were dropped. I just I'm sorry, 7 of the 10 charges were dropped against Congressman Jefferson based on the outcome of that case. I'm scanning quickly here. Essentially, what the trial, what Jack Smith argued, and what the jury found was that there was a quid pro quo, that money was being given to Bob McDonald's wife, and then Bob McDonald was helping a company, tobacco company in Virginia called Star Scientific, I think, something like that. And money was going to Bob McDonald's wife. McDonald did not appear to even know about the money going to his wife. And the court held that an official act within the federal bribery statutes does not include merely setting up a meeting or calling another official or hosting an event, which is all Bob McDonald did. And it was unanimous. John Roberts wrote the decision. But the underlying subtext in that case was that federal prosecutors were stretching federal bribery statutes further than they should be stretched, to the point they were going to tear up the federal bribery statute. And that concerned John Roberts significantly so. That's the case here in New York. If I were a betting man, I would bet the reason Amy Coney Barrett and John Roberts refused to take up the sentencing case, the sentencing issue, is because they understand what would happen if you postpone sentencing until after Trump left office. You'd actually put Trump in a more precarious position, because the judge this morning made it clear that part of his underlying reason for nothing, no jail time, no probation, no nothing, was because Trump is going to be president of the United States. So you postpone sentencing until after he's president. Suddenly, that's no longer the thinking of the judge. So Barrett and Roberts actually did Trump a favor, saving him from himself, because Trump would no longer be president when this happened. And also, the appeal would go forward later. No guarantee the Supreme Court would maintain its current 6-3 composition by the time it got there. There's been a lot of hysteria overnight, screaming and crying and belly aching. I've seen people say, I'm going to start calling Amy Coney Barrett Amy Commie Barrett. Why? She actually did Trump a favor. John Roberts did Trump a favor by refusing to postpone sentencing, because by refusing to postpone sentencing, an appeal can now happen. Had they postponed sentencing, there was no way to appeal this case. And this case is a travesty of justice, and it needs to be thrown out. And I think, based on John Roberts' concerns in the McDonald case from 2016, a unanimous Supreme Court that included Sonia Sotomayor and Elena Kagan, by the way, thought that the Jack Smith was stretching federal bribery statutes so far he was going to tear them up altogether. In this case, the state of New York claimed that Donald Trump violated state law by violating a federal law for which Donald Trump has never been charged with violating, and in fact, the Federal Elections Commission says he had not violated. And what the underlying argument from the judge is that it doesn't matter what the FEC says, and it doesn't matter that Donald Trump wasn't prosecuted, that based on a plain reading of the law, Donald Trump ran afoul of that administrative law in record keeping for his documentation of payment to Stormy Daniels. Therefore, he could be charged with an underlying state statute. That is literally, in the entire history of our republic, never happened. It has never happened. But they wanted to get Donald Trump. So in trying to get Donald Trump, they stretched a state statute and a federal statute to the point of ripping those statutes. Again, in the entire history of our republic, No one has ever been charged with violating a state law based on violating a federal campaign finance law for which that person was never prosecuted at the federal level. In fact, the federal campaign finance law states specifically that no state can prosecute violations of federal campaign finance law. So this takes it even a further step where you have to have the judge claim a finding of guilt for Trump on a federal statute that the judge is not even allowed to find him guilty on in order to have the state statute. And if the Supreme Court had postponed sentencing for 4 years, they couldn't throw this out. I don't know whether Amy Coney Barrett and John Roberts will vote to throw it out. I suspect John Roberts will, based on the McDonald case. But what I do know for certain is they couldn't have that opportunity if they postponed sentencing. Donald Trump has to be able to appeal, and he can't appeal until sentencing. So go on and get it over with. I mean, Amy Coney Barrett sided with Donald Trump on the immunity case. I can't imagine she wouldn't side with him here when Amy Coney Barrett is a judge after Antonin Scalia's heart. She was one of his favorite law clerks, and it is very clear from the underlying federal statute that state governments can't prosecute. I don't know how Amy Coney Barrett could justify giving the state the power to prosecute a state charge based on a federal charge when they're not allowed to charge the underlying federal charge. It makes no sense to me that they did it. And the judge and everyone, by the way, every single person justifying the judge is twisting the law and the Constitution in ways they claim Donald Trump does. One of the only honest brokers here is Ellie Honig, who is the Supreme Court or chief legal correspondent for CNN, who's a liberal lawyer in New York, who himself has said this case is a travesty of justice. Ellie Honig, who is a progressive, on CNN. He's not a conservative. He doesn't like Trump. And even he says that this case should never have been brought. It should have never been tried. The judge got the underlying interpretation of the law flat out, obviously wrong. Major legal commentators on the left and the right have agreed. The Democrats have largely agreed, except they want to be able to call Donald Trump a felon. And today they're all celebrating they get to call Donald Trump a felon. And what does the felony conviction of Donald Trump mean? Nothing. Unconditional discharge. Sounds like some sort of bodily function. So, yeah, the left gets to say Donald Trump will enter office as a felon, but they've been calling him a felon for a while. They've called him a rapist and gotten sued for it. They'll be able to call him a felon, but it doesn't matter. There's going to be no probation. There's going to be no sentencing. There's going to be no burden. There'll be a financial burden. That's about it. This was all smoke and mirrors because the left wanted Donald Trump's scalp. And they'll be able to start officially calling him a felon, something they've already called him, and that's it. That's it. And now, because of what John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett did, the Supreme Court will be able to get this case and dismiss it and throw it all out, which they should do because it's always been an overreach.
When the world seems crazy, he'll keep you sane. It's the Erick Erickson
It is an open line Friday. The phone number is 877-973-7425 if you want to be on the program. The Supreme Court is currently hearing the arguments in the TikTok divestment case. I will talk to you guys about it. We got to wait for the hearing to conclude. I got a buddy of mine who is listening in, who's live tweeting it. I'm following along so I can give you all the details. But in a nutshell, right now, the government is only just taking to the floor to make its argument, and it is going very, very, very badly for TikTok. This may be a like 9-0 decision in favor of the government. There was a funny moment though that just happened where the Solicitor General of the United States, Perloger, is defending it, talking about covert entities using TikTok, and Elena Kagan just slaps her hands down and says, "Can we just say China? We all know it's China." Good for her. Good for her for not suffering the fools. I look, I disagree with Elena Kagan's jurisprudence, but she's very, very sharp. And I very much like her interactions with the court. She forces the conservatives on the court to be on their A game, and I appreciate people on the left who do it. It's why Antonin Scalia wanted Elena Kagan to be on the United States Supreme Court. He knew he would disagree with her, but he appreciated her intellectual honesty, that she was very sharp, she was playing a long game, and that she forced conservatives on the court to not be lazy. And it is true, it's held up. His analysis was very sharp. Antonin Scalia is one of the most brilliant minds to have ever sat on the U.S. Supreme Court, and he could see how it was shaping up. And Sotomayor instead was put on the court before Kagan. And the result, of course, is that Sonia Sotomayor is not an intellectual bright light. She's actually kind of dim-witted. Her jurisprudence is always predictable. Kagan's jurisprudence is not. And the sharper the person on the Supreme Court, the less predictable they tend to be. Even Clarence Thomas is more likely to surprise you where he lands on a case and on a decision than Sonia Sotomayor. She's just not super bright. And Elena Kagan is. And of course, Elena Kagan is reliably on the left on the Supreme Court. But her arguments are always so sharp, she forces better arguments from the conservatives on the court. By the way, there's breaking news. It turns out that Mayor Karen Bass of Los Angeles demanded the fire department cut an extra $49 million out of the fire department budget a week before the fires. Now, I got to tell you about Old Glory Bank. Some of you don't actually believe. I'm not going to give you my bank account number. But a year before they became an advertiser, I got an account with Old Glory Bank. And I started pestering them about 6 months in. I would like to advertise for you. You're a new bank. You're by conservatives for conservatives. I want you as an advertiser. And they finally, after about 6 months of bullying them, they finally said yes. I love them. Their app is better than the app for the other bank I had. That was an online bank. You can move money around very easily. You can do mortgages. You can do car loans. You can do business loans. You can do lines of credit. They've got a no-fee checking, no-fee savings account. They've got checking accounts and savings accounts that are a little more robust, but I've got the no-fee checking and savings, and I like it. You can get a custodial account for your kids. OldGloryBank.com. Just go there. OldGloryBank.com. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Terms and conditions apply. It really is my bank. OldGloryBank.com. Welcome back. It's Erick Erickson here. Open Line Friday. The phone number is 877-973-7425 if you want to be on the program. I'm going to detour into an area, and I'm going to circle back to this probably later in the show, but I want to spend a little bit of time talking about North Carolina. There is a guy, I don't know him. His name is Matt Van Swoel. He is a photographer for Apple, United, and Hyatt, head of subscription growth for Waze cameras. And he lives in Asheville, North Carolina. And FEMA is significantly screwing up. He noted this morning that FEMA is closing all of its offices in Western North Carolina Friday to Sunday because of snow. They're also extending their transitional sheltering program for 24 hours to households scheduled to check out of hotels and motels on January 11th. 104 days after Hurricane Helene, and they were trying to throw people out of hotels who don't have houses to go to till the snow came in. In California, Joe Biden has said the federal government will cover 100% of the cost of measures to protect the lives and property of Southern California for 6 months. In North Carolina, less than 6 months after Hurricane Helene, they're throwing people out onto the streets. Why is that? Today, there's a 3-mile-long line for propane to heat homes or to heat donated RVs. FEMA closed all of its disaster relief centers until Monday. People are living in donated RVs. Those donated RVs have propane tanks connected to them to provide fuel for stoves and heat. And there are 3-mile-long lines because the storms come in, the snows come in. But you know what the media wants to talk about? The media doesn't want to talk about Western North Carolina. Here's the headline from the AFP. The last 2 years crossed the 1.5 Celsius global warming limit, according to the UN. 2024 was the hottest year on record. I told you guys and have told you repeatedly that the Hunga Tonga Hunga volcano ejected so much water vapor into the air that for the next decade, temperatures would be abnormally high. And that after that volcano exploded, an underwater volcano sending like 150 trillion metric tons of water into the atmosphere. The largest discharge of water vapor in the atmosphere in recorded history. Water vapor is considered a greenhouse gas. It causes heat generation. And because that volcano did that, we were going to have hotter than normal temperatures and wilder weather. And the press corps refuses to acknowledge that the volcano had anything to do with it, because if they blame us, they can carry on this progressive orthodoxy. In Los Angeles, in California, the progressives in the press are circling the wagons, attacking Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and conservatives for suggesting that climate change had less to do with the fires in California than the incompetence of government and the arsonists. No, we can only talk about climate change, according to these people. Only climate change can be a legitimate conversation. Meanwhile, in the South, we've got snow. People snowed in Atlanta, abandoned cars on the streets yet again. As an aside, the governor of the state of Georgia, Brian Kemp, yesterday declared a statewide emergency, told everyone to stay home, told everyone the weather was completely unpredictable in the storm, didn't know whether it was going to snow, sleet, or ice. They knew it was coming. They knew when it would hit. They said, stay off the roads. And morons this morning got up and tried to go to work and then abandoned their cars on the streets of Atlanta because they chose not to listen to the governor. And I bet you they chose not to listen to him because he's got an R next to his name. That is my guess. All the businesses in Atlanta decided, you know what, we better not open. And yet some people said, no, I'm not going to believe this guy. He's a Republican. I'm going to go to work. And they got stuck and abandoned their cars. We got global warming on the ground across Georgia. Maybe it's the devil's dandruff. Maybe it's just cocaine. It certainly it can't snow in the South anymore. Maybe the drug lords are having a moment. It's too warm to snow in the South, they tell us. These environmentalists are demanding orthodoxy from the media, towing the party line about a hot earth and the fires, and they're ignoring the people of Western North Carolina. The President of the United States is ignoring the people of Western North Carolina. He's telling the government you're going to cover 100% of the cost for 6 months in California. Meanwhile, FEMA is literally trying to evict people from hotel rooms in Western North Carolina, and they have no place to go. They do not have a home to go to. FEMA has done all sorts of screwing up. The federal government has done all sorts of screwing up. Now, there's a tie here that I gotta dive into. One of the biggest problems we're dealing with in our society right now in terms of the press, and I got a lot to say in the press about the press later in the show, but there's one thing I want to get to right now, and that is when every story has become nationalized about Washington and Donald Trump, it shapes the coverage in ways that actually distort what's happening. You can't ask the tough questions of local officials. The national press can't because that's not about Donald Trump. You can't cover Western North Carolina because those people are Trump voters and it would make Joe Biden look bad. You can't ask about the incompetence and failures of the mayor of Los Angeles because she's a former Democratic member of Congress who Barack Obama supported. That would make them look bad. They got to enforce progressive orthodoxies. And they've got to find an angle that ties it to Washington. And if there's not an angle that ties it to Washington that makes Republicans look bad, they can't cover the situation. The people of Western North Carolina could use some national media coverage. The people of Western North Carolina could use Anderson Cooper there covering them, but he's in Los Angeles. The fires are a sexy story. Western North Carolina is old news now. It's old news where people are about to be evicted from hotel rooms with no houses to go to because of government incompetence. Everybody wants to talk about the new and the shiny, not the old and boring. Meanwhile, there's a photographer who's becoming, you can see it in his tweets. He's not a conservative. He's becoming radicalized against the federal government because of the incompetence of FEMA. And it seems like there should just be a story there on basic government competence. If anything, that is the underlying subtext of the 2024 election is government competence. They broke the economy. They can't keep people safe. They can't secure the border. They can't take care of those in need after natural disaster. The government has become incompetent. The stories are there for everyone to see. The stories are there. Nobody wants to see them. Nobody wants to know them. Nobody wants to pay attention to them, but the stories are there. The media doesn't want to talk about them because there's no way to blame Donald Trump. The media is going to be very interested in Western North Carolina the moment Donald Trump takes office, and the FEMA stories will roll in as, oh my God, Donald Trump gets elected, and look at how incompetent FEMA is. FEMA's incompetent right now. 10 days before Donald Trump is president. FEMA was incompetent 100 days ago in Western North Carolina. Some of the salacious stories about what FEMA was and wasn't doing, they weren't true. They weren't true. And that gave license to the media to ignore it. And that's part of the problem. You guys, one of the reasons that I emphasize that conservatives need to be committed to the truth and not tell the salacious stories that aren't really true is because when you tell the stories that aren't really true, it gives the media license to ignore the true stories. Well, they were lying about that. They got to be lying about this. No, this one's real. What's happening with FEMA is real now. And they don't want to cover it. They don't want to talk about it. We still don't know how many people died in Western North Carolina. And it's going to be quite some time before we know how many people are dead in California. It's going to take a lot of time. A lot of names of people are never actually going to come out. We're not going to know, but there will be families whose loved ones are gone. My sister works for a company that oversees some nursing homes. One of the nursing homes in Los Angeles is gone. They were thankfully able to get all the elderly out of the nursing home, but it's gone. North Carolina nursing homes are gone because of the hurricane. We don't know the names of the patients or the names of the doctors. We don't quite know the locations, but they're gone. And the difference is that Joe Biden's decided to cover 100% of the cost of the damage in California, but not in North Carolina. And the only real difference is that California voted Democrat and North Carolina did not. And when the president of the United States, who's supposed to be the president of all Americans and lectures us repeatedly on how he's the president of all Americans, is willing to treat California and North Carolina's natural disasters differently because one state's Democrat and one state's not, that's part of the problem. And the press will not ask about that because the press is on the side of the progressives, on the side of the environmentalist activists who don't want us to know about the incompetence of man or the decisions of government, but can only and forever blame global warming. This is why we can't have nice things anymore. One group that's pushing back on all this nonsense is Americans for Prosperity. They'd love to have your help doing it. Americans for Prosperity is the largest and leading grassroots entity in the country, and they happen to be on our side. Americans for Prosperity would love to have you join them. Across the country, Americans for Prosperity can train you to be the most effective conservative activist possible. They can teach you how to knock on doors and have persuasive sessions with your neighbors to convince them that common sense conservative reform is the way to go. They can teach you how to go to your state legislature, your local government to be involved, or very simply, they can just help you be the most informed person in your circle of friends so you can keep your friends informed. And it's very easy. They have chapters in every state. All you have to do is go to americansforprosperity.org. You sign up with AFP at americansforprosperity.org. I'm actually going to go do an event for them at the end of this month in California. They're a great group. They would love to have you. americansforprosperity.org.
He's got the courage to tell you the actual truth, even when it isn't popular. It's the Erick Erickson Show.
news. There's breaking news happening. Meta, they got rid of the fact checkers. They're announcing today the end of all DEI programs effective immediately, including for hiring, training, and picking suppliers, according to a new employee memo. They're ditching DEI. Meta says it's changing course because, quote, the legal and policy landscape surrounding diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts in the United States is changing, according to Janelle Gale, the Vice President for Human Resources. Project 2025 is already happening, and Donald Trump's not even in the White House. God bless Meta for this. That's fantastic. And they're not alone. Robbie Starbuck out of Nashville is an activist who has been doing stories on companies that in their advertising target conservatives, but in their hiring are embracing woke progressive values. McDonald's, Tractor Supply. He's going after Target, Walmart, other companies, getting them to drop DEI as well. DEI is an albatross around the neck of the Fortune 500. They embraced that stuff after George Floyd to signal their fidelity to whatever they thought was relevant at the time, Black Lives Matters, progressivism, whatever, and it has just become now really a millstone around their neck more than an albatross. It's dragging them down. The problem is that diversity, equity, and inclusion programs want people who look different as long as they still maintain progressive groupthink. Real diversity comes from a diversity of ideas. It's something that is lacking on college campuses around the country now. College campuses are becoming madrasas of America, radicalizing students against this country. And I think when Donald Trump comes in, like, for example, take the Jewish students across the country who have been harassed on college campuses. If you're Donald Trump, I think when you come into office, you've got to be able to send the Department of Justice after these colleges that have turned a blind eye towards the harassment of Jewish students on campus. I personally find that stuff to be enraging, that a Jewish student isn't safe on a college campus in this country. It's just wild. Oh, okay. We still got a lot to talk about. I wanted the Supreme Court hearings are wrapping up on TikTok. And at the bottom of the next hour, I will be able to go into this commercial break and then the next one and dive through the transcript of the oral arguments and some Twitter threads to be able to keep you up to date on it. But when we come back, we got to talk about, it's not just DEI that everybody's getting out of. It is the global ESG movement that is collapsing. BlackRock is the latest to get out of an international climate change group where it was very clear that companies were violating federal law by conspiring together to really push a global warming agenda, a climate change agenda. Take your phone calls as well, 877-973-7425. And I'm keeping up on the breaking news as well out there. We've got the weather in the south is wreaking havoc on air travel. Delta taking off in Atlanta had to evacuate. There's a lot to go through along with your phone calls when we come back. But yeah, I'm going to save my tirade about the California fires for the third hour because I've talked about it so much the last couple of days. We'll save that for the third hour. Right now, I got to tell you, this hour of the program is brought to you by First Liberty Building and Loan. The economy is changing, and you may see some opportunities that didn't exist when Biden was in office, now that Trump is coming back in office. And First Liberty Building and Loan would love to help you with those opportunities. They have been helping small businesses become big businesses since the 90s, and they would love to help your business if they can. All you got to do is reach out to them at firstlibertyga.com, firstlibertyga.com. Tell them I sent you. See if they can work with you. See if you can work with them. The Frost family has been doing this. They've got a passion to help businesses grow. They'd love to help your business if they can. First Liberty Building and Loan, firstlibertyga.com, firstlibertyga.com. We'll be right back. 877-973-7425.